party. Barbara Lee was born on April the 30th, 1960. Mrs. Lee has always arranged a birthday party for her since her 5th birthday. Though people know about Mr. Lee's strange continental habits, they like coming to these parties. Mrs. Lee knows what people like. She well knows why they go to parties, so she always invites a VIP or two to make her parties fashionable. The guests usually arrive at about 7:30, and Denton Cottage is soon full of people. Before they arrive, Mrs. Lee goes round to see if everything is all right. She wants to know if the gardener has arranged the coloured lights in the garden properly. She asks Barbara and Kate if they've arranged the food and drink on the long tables in the rooms and the garden. Fortunately, the weather is often fine at the end of April. At 7 o'clock, Mr. Lee goes into the study and locks the door from the inside. Nobody knows where he keeps the Leonardo. Even the children do not know where the safe is, so they may not go into the study until Mr. Lee has taken the picture out. Then Barbara asks, "May I come in?" And the others come in after her. Barbara gets all her presents at breakfast, except the most valuable ones which they give her in the evening. They kiss her and say, "Many happy returns of the day." This year it was a fine day on April the 30th. The air was warm and there were no clouds in the sky. The sun was setting when Mr. Lee went into the study. Dick wanted to go in with him, but he wasn't allowed to. After a few minutes, Mr. Lee called them in. Barbara was allowed to go in first, and then the others followed her. While Mr. and Mrs. Lee and Kate were giving their presents to Barbara, Dick quickly took an envelope off his father's desk. Then Barbara said thank you for the presents and went out with Kate. Mr. Lee asked Dick to keep an eye on the Leonardo, because the girls had to do some work in the kitchen, and he and his wife had to meet the guests at the gate and show them in.
Stan wants to know where Dick is. Stanley Dixon knew the Lees' habits. He came to Denton Cottage while the Lees were in the study and hurried upstairs. Fortunately, nobody noticed him. He wanted to ask the new gardener to help him. He didn't know Joe, of course. He knocked on Joe's door. There was no answer. He knocked again. Nothing. He was about to leave when a voice inside said, "Who's that?" "May I come in?" Stan asked. "What?" the voice answered. It was Joe. He was in his room because he was tired and thirsty. "May I come in?" Stan repeated. "Just a minute," Joe said, and put a bottle of whiskey, which was half empty, behind the bed. Then he opened the door and let Stan in.
Are you the new gardener?
What? Pardon?
Are you the new gardener?
Yes. Who are you?
I was the gardener here before you.
Oh. What do you want?
Can you tell me if Dick Lee's at home? I'd like to talk to him.
Of course he's in. It's his sister's birthday party.
Do you know which room he's in now?
I don't know where he is now. I only know he's at home. Perhaps he's in the garage. When he's in, he's usually in the garage. I don't understand why he's always under that car of his mother's.
Do you think that he's working in the garage on Barbara's birthday?
I've already told you. I don't know where he's working or what he's doing. Why on earth do you want to talk to him?
I lent him £30 when I worked here, you know. It's 3 months now and he hasn't paid it back. I wonder if I'll ever be able to get the money if I can't get it now. Do you know what time the guests are arriving?
Henry and Fred promised to come at 9. I wonder why they asked me to be careful.
Who are Henry and Fred?
Oh, nothing. Now leave me alone. I've got some work to do. I must go to the kitchen.
May I stay in your room until the guests arrive?
What do you think this is? A hotel?
Please, will you let me stay here? I don't want to meet Mrs. Lee. She can't stand me, you see.
What?
Mrs. Lee doesn't like me.
And I don't like her.
Well, may I stay?
Yes, you may. But you must leave the room before 9 and don't touch anything.
Everybody was having a good time. At 9:15, Stanley Dixon went downstairs. He looked round carefully and went into the study. There were a lot of people there. The men were talking about politics and the latest news. The women were chatting about their families and fashion, or having a good gossip about other women. And, of course, everybody was talking about the weather. They were having a good time. As Stan stepped inside, he heard, "Happy birthday," and "Cheers." The guests lifted their glasses and drank to Barbara's health. Then he caught sight of Dick. He was standing near his father in front of the Leonardo. They were talking to one of the guests. Stan went closer to them, always keeping an eye on the door. One of the guests, a small thin man with a big moustache, was teasing Mr. Lee. "Well, Bob," he said, "I don't think this is the original Leonardo. I'm sure you keep the original in the bank, and this is only a copy." Mr. Lee laughed, but Dick's face turned white. "Excuse me," he said to his father, "I'm not feeling very well. May I go to my room?" And he hurried out. Stan was about to follow him when he heard Mrs. Lee's voice outside the door. He looked round quickly, stepped between the cupboard and the wall, and managed to draw the curtain in front of him before Mrs. Lee entered.
Two shots. "I don't think you've met Barbara," Mrs. Lee said in a loud voice. "This is Eve Bellamy, the famous writer. This is Barbara, my daughter. How do you do? How do you do? Happy birthday, my dear." "Thank you. I hear that you've just come back from America," Barbara said. "What's it like over there?" "Well, it's a very interesting country," Miss Bellamy began, but she wasn't able to go on because Mrs. Lee didn't let anybody talk for very long. "Yes, dear," she said. "I haven't seen you for ages. Now, let's see, how long have you been away?" "Just over a year." "Then I don't think you've seen my new ring. Do you know where I bought it? I'm sure you'll—" What a horrible woman, Stanley thought. "I wonder when she'll stop talking and get out of here." He didn't have to wait long, because at that moment he heard two shots from the garden. After the shots, there was a short silence. Then everyone started to shout and run out of the room. Stanley was about to come out from behind the curtain when all the lights went out.